With Lacey Evans reportedly departing WWE, what is the reason that she ended up leaving the company? Let's talk about that. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. The reports have recently come out that Lacey Evans is officially done with WWE. She is no longer with the company, and she will be moving on to other ventures, possibly in pro wrestling, maybe even outside of the business. Who knows? We will have to wait and see. It can only be presumed that she has the standard WWE contract 90-day non-compete clause. So if she were to hypothetically go to AEW or another professional wrestling company, she would have to wait for 3 months before being able to sign and debut. Now, in the case of Lacey Evans no longer being with WWE, this is a story that really caught me by surprise. I recall seeing the rumors of her potentially departing the company. She had taken to social media teasing that her contract was coming up, and I thought maybe this was being blown out of proportion. But lo and behold, it was the truth. Her contract did expire. She is no longer with the company. The reason it's surprising is because she wasn't off of WWE programming for that long. Her last televised appearance was back in June in a loss to Charlotte Flair, and then she had appeared most recently sometime in July for a live event match with Zelina Vega, I believe. So it's not like she just hasn't been doing anything, but she hasn't been utilized that much as of late. Like I said, this whole thing kind of came out of left field for me. Now, before we get too much into the speculation portion of this video, I want to give a quick recap of events that have taken place recently. On July 27th, Steve Carey of Ringside News said WWE brought Lacey Evans back to television and it caused a bunch of problems with Sgt Slaughter. Then she vanished. We were not able to confirm that the two are related, but Lacey Evans is not getting any creative pitches in the creative team right now. Then we jump to August 14th. Where Lacey Evans initially hinted that her WWE contract would be running out. She posted a GIF that says, "Roger, how many days left?" insinuating that her WWE deal is close to expiring. When I first saw this, as I previously stated, I really did not think much of it. It was very ominous, to say the least, but it was right on the money for those that thought this has to do with her WWE deal, because the next day she would put out on Instagram a photo as well as writing, "When the clock strikes 12, you will address me as Macy Estrella from here on out. Oh, and this jacket is up for grabs. Be on the lookout. Hashtag coming soon. Hashtag no manners Macy. Hashtag gotta think of some other cool hashtag. Hashtag Lord look at me." That was seemingly the confirmation that Lacey Evans would be leaving WWE, telling fans to call her by a different name, no longer Lacey Evans, and she'd also changed her handles and names on her social media bios. And then we get to the present day, Wednesday, August 16th, where it becomes as official as it can get with online reports that Lacey Evans is out of the company. Ringside News writes, Dave Meltzer has now confirmed on F4W Online that Lacey Evans is done with WWE, although no other details were given. Her time with the company has come to an end. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful would add that same day, Lacey Evans' Instagram now refers to her as formerly known as WWE superstar Lacey Evans. WWE have not confirmed her release to us. She has indicated that her deal was up at midnight. There haven't been any internal notifications about it, and she hasn't been involved in recent creative. A fan had even suggested that maybe she should do some OnlyFans. She responded with some emojis, and then she came out later and said, "First OnlyFans post, President hard at work on White House desk." So it looks like that avenue, OnlyFans, could be in her immediate future following her release from WWE or her contract expiring, however you want to phrase it. It would then be added by Steve Carey of Ringside News, Lacey Evans is gone from WWE. We have received word that the WWE creative team was that they no longer have access to her. So at least from this report, those in the company, specifically the creative team, have been informed that Lacey Evans is no longer longer going to be with them and not to come up with anything for her, though as previous reports suggested, they weren't coming up with anything to begin with, at least in the last couple months. And that is the latest bit of news regarding Lacey Evans' departure from WWE. As of this moment, there is no official word from the company that she has been let go, but if you do go to WWE's website on the Superstar section and travel to those in the alumni portion of it, you will see Lacey Evans listed there. I would imagine that that's about as official as it's going to get. WWE has at the very least acknowledged that Lacey Evans is no longer with the company. Of course, to be fair, they did this with Jey Uso as well, and we're all pretty certain that he is not actually done with the company. Reports have not indicated that to be the case, that he has left the company. It's all part of a storyline that we're aware of. Lacey Evans has had no storylines, hardly a presence on programming lately, and WWE has at the very least acknowledged that she is an alumni at this point. I just always remember, at least within the last few years, up until recently, WWE would at the very least on their website have a little article wishing whoever was recently released the best in their future endeavors. And even in some cases, they would have a list, like when they did roster cuts, they would list them all out and say, we wish them all the best in their future endeavors. But they haven't done that for Lacey Evans, and I don't think they will. But at the very least, they have moved her to the alumni section, seemingly confirming her release from the company. Now that we've gone over what's happened recently, we've confirmed that Lacey Evans is no longer with the company, more than likely will be under a 90-day non-compete clause. We should be getting more information on that hopefully in the days or weeks to come. But the real question now is, what happened? Why did Lacey Evans leave? Can we simply chalk it up to creative differences, simply not being utilized by the company? Or could it be a business opportunity for Lacey Evans thinking, well, I could make more money outside of WWE doing something like OnlyFans or Brand Army or any of these other online photo posting services, whatever you want to call them. Maybe that could be the thought process behind it. The only other thing that we can really look to and speculate on is the drama that was caused with WWE Hall of Famer Sgt Slaughter. This was in the news for a while, and Sgt Slaughter's done a good bit of interviews where he's talked about Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans and him have gone back and forth on social media. Sgt Slaughter's daughter has even taken shots at Lacey Evans. This has to do with Lacey Evans coming back to WWE, making a return, and essentially being repackaged. We all knew about her Marine Corps background, and so they decided to play into it, add it to her character. I don't think it was necessarily the character of a Marine that Lacey is portraying on television that Sgt Slaughter, or really anyone, had an issue with. She's a legit Marine, so what is the problem there? Sgt Slaughter had an issue with Lacey Evans using his signature move, the Cobra Clutch, as her finisher. There was even a point early on during this little beef that they had online that Sgt Slaughter sent her a message and said, "All right, soldier, yeah, you can use it," something to that effect. But he continued doing the rounds, doing these interviews, and plenty of other people had talked about it. Many in the professional wrestling industry have weighed in on, is this gimmick infringement? Does Sgt Slaughter have a right to be angry? And most of them don't really see it his way in terms of gimmick infringement. But the one thing I do think they see is that she is using his move, his signature move, the Cobra Clutch. And in the olden days of professional wrestling, if you were going to use someone's finisher or you wanted to use a move that was even remotely similar to theirs, you had to at the very least ask or get their blessing or have them bless you with that move. Like Randy Orton didn't start using the RKO just out of nowhere. Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, came up to him backstage and said, let's come up with a new finisher. Well, how about you use the Ace Crusher? How about you use my move? And so Randy started using it. He got Johnny Ace's blessing to use that finishing maneuver, and he's been using it ever since. He popularized it in his own way, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now, when it comes to the feud if you want to call it that, between Lacey Evans and Sgt Slaughter, and to an extent, Sgt Slaughter's daughter. Is that a reason to let Lacey Evans go? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And there was even reports that they tried to get Sgt Slaughter involved. So they might have tried to do it the old-fashioned way in terms of passing the torch, giving the blessing, like, hey Sarge, can you come in, work with Lacey, be your manager, give her some pep talks, be in some vignettes, and he ended up turning it down because he said the money wasn't good enough. I don't think that's a good enough reason to say that she got let go. From everything I've seen so far, the lack of creative, her not being on television, those two things right there are good enough reasons for me to say that's why she ended up leaving. I also think you can compound that with wanting to pursue outside interests like OnlyFans or Brand Army or anything of that same ilk. Now, could she also be thinking about going back into professional wrestling for another company and maybe even getting a bigger paycheck from the likes of AEW? Potentially, that could happen. But one thing, I think it's not certain. We don't know this yet, and maybe we will get more information down the line. I don't think it's the Sgt Slaughter business. From what I recall for the past few months, the only stories there have been about Lacey Evans have to do with Sgt Slaughter. Like maybe she would have a match on programming when she was on television and someone maybe posted a gif of her here and there, but her segments weren't home runs. They weren't the most viewed spots on TV. She wasn't getting a ton of buzz. The only thing that was really getting her attention was that little online feud with Sgt Slaughter. And now the biggest news story having to do with Lacey Evans is that she's no longer in WWE. So the only things I could chalk it up to right now are lack of creative, potentially creative differences, frustrations over not being utilized or just used at all on programming, and also wanting to potentially pursue other business ventures. That's why I think Lacey Evans was released or not re-signed or did not want to re-sign with WWE. I think this was on her part. I think WWE probably would have picked her contract up and tried to find something to do with her, but there's also a lot of moving parts, so that can be difficult in terms of the creative process to get everyone involved on programming to some extent. But be sure to let me know what you guys think about all of this. Where do you think Lacey Evans will end up? What would you like to see her do next? I'd love to hear from you. Post down below in the comments. That's all I've got. I'll see y'all later.